You did it.
Hare Krishna. Beautiful.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. We're studying Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 15, entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person. We're in text 13. It's December 18th, 2022. We're here at Prabhupada House in Melrose, Florida. All right. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Welcome. All right, text 13. Gam
Yam
Avishya
Avishya
Cha Utani
Utani
Darayami
Yavayani
Aham
Aham
Ojasa
Ojasa
Ushnami
Ushnami
Chashadi
Choshani
Sarva
Sarva
Somo
Somo
Bhutva
Bhutva
Prasatmaka
Prasatmaka
Gama Vishya Chabhutani
Dhammavisha Sarvutani
Darayam Yaham Ojasa
Dharayana Ojasa
Ushnami Chashadhi Sarva
Ushnami Shashari Sarva
Samo Bhutva Rasatmaka
Samudra Satva
Gama Vishya Chabhutani
Dhammavisha Sarvutani
Darayam Yaham Ojasa
Dharayana Ojasa
Ushnami Chashadhi Sarva
Ushnami Shashari Sarva
Samo Bhutva Rasatmaka
Samudra Satva
Gama Vishya Chabhutani
Dhammavisha Sarvutani
Darayam Yaham Ojasa
Dharayana Ojasa
Pushnami Chashadi Sarva
Ushnami Shashari Sarva
Samo Bhutva Rasatmaka.
Samudra Satva
Would others like to chant the verse?
Gama Vishya Jabhutani
Gama Vishya Chabhutani
Darayam Yaham Ojasa
Darayam Yaham Ojasa
Ushnami Choshadi Sarva
Pushnami Choshadi Sarva
Soma Bhutva Rasatmaka
Somo Bhutva Rasatmaka
Avisha Chabutani
Gama Vishya Chabhutani
Darayam Yaham Ojasa
Darayam Yaham Ojasa
Ushnani Koshadi Sarva
Pushnami Choshadi Sarva
Somo Bhutva Rasatmakaha
Somo Bhutva Rasatmakaha
Dhammavisha Chabutani
Gama Vishya Chabhutani Darayam Yaham Ojasa Pushnami Choshadi Sarva Somo Bhutva Rasatmaka
Dhammavisha Chabutani
Gama Vishya Chabhutani
Darayam Aham Ojasaha
Darayam Yaham Ajasa
Ushnami Chashadi Sarva
Pushnami Choshadi Sarva
Sarvabhutva Rasatmakaha
Somo Bhutva Rasatmakaha. Okay, we'll go to the word for word meanings. Gam,
Gam,
the planets.
the planets.
Avisha,
Avisha,
entering.
Entering.
Cha,
Cha.
also.
Also.
Bhutani,
Bhutani,
living entities.
living entities.
Dharayami,
Dharayami.
sustaining.
Sustaining.
Aham,
Aham.
I.
I,
Ojasa,
Ojasa.
by my energy.
By my energy.
Pushnami,
Pushnami.
nourishing.
Nourishing.
Cha,
Cha.
and
And
Oshadi,
Oshadi.
all vegetables.
All vegetables.
Sarva,
Sarva.
all.
all,
Soma,
Soma.
the moon.
The moon.
Utva,
Utva.
becoming.
Becoming.
Rasa Atmaka,
Rasatmaka.
supplying the juice.
Supplying the juice.
Translation. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is understood that all the planets are floating in the air only by the energy of the Lord. The Lord enters into every atom, every planet, and every living being. That is discussed in the Brahma Samhita. It is said there that one plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, enters into the planets, the universe, the living entity, and even into the atom. So due to his entrance, everything is appropriately manifested. When the spirit soul is there, a living man can float on the water, but when the living spark is out of the body and the body is dead, it sinks. Of course, when it is decomposed, it floats just like straw and other things. But as soon as the man is dead, he at once sinks in the water. Similarly, all these planets are floating in space, and this is due to the entrance of the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His energy is sustaining each planet, just like a handful of dust. If someone holds a handful of dust, there is no possibility of the dust falling. But if one throws it in the air, it will fall down. Similarly, these planets, which are floating in air, are actually held in the fist of the universal form of the Supreme Lord. By his strength and energy, all moving and unmoving things stay in their place. It is said that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining and the planets are steadily moving. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in air and perish. Similarly, it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the moon nourishes all vegetables. Due to the moon's influence, the vegetables become delicious. Without the moonshine, the vegetables can neither grow nor taste succulent. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply from the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, mankind could not survive. The word rasatmaka is very significant. Everything becomes palatable by the agency of the Supreme Lord through the influence of the moon. Okay, so I'm going to recite a few more mantras to continue to invoke auspiciousness in our gathering. You're welcome to hear or chant along. And these mantras essentially were invoking the presence, the blessings, the support of pure personalities, such that hopefully whatever we speak will represent the essence and spirit and substance of those personalities of this transpersonal literature, Bhagavad Gita. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajitam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanditam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Garange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpati Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 13. Gamavishya Chabutani Darayam Yaham Ojasa Pushnami Cha Shadi Sarva Somo Bhutva Rasatmaka. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. So, all 700 verses of this book, Bhagavad Gita, are transcendental, meaning they're not affected by any of the qualities of matter. They're sourced, they're originating from a completely pure place. And that's why whatever we understand or not, just to expose ourselves to the sound vibration is transformational. It cleanses the heart. Some verses amongst us, they're all transcendental, and some are emphasized for us more than others. As far as I'm aware, this is not one of those. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this verse, chosen, inspired by Mother Lakshmi Priya. Yeah, it's great. It's great. So right. So I appreciate the opportunity to immerse my consciousness in this verse, which is it's like, at least for me personally, and I in this body anyway. But for about 40 years, I've a little more actually. I've been reading Bhagavad Gita, so this isn't a verse I focused on too much. So this is great honor and opportunity. So, all right. So we can see that, like, I don't know. So nowadays, there's like they put up satellites. I don't even know for what, but for different internet stuff and satellite TV. Don't know what that is. Okay, but satellite TV and rocket ships and like that, or just regular airplanes. So we can see, like, okay, so to put a satellite up, and I know there's spy satellites, different for different military war purposes, all sorts of satellites. So I say, so how do the satellites get up there? How do the airplanes fly and stay up there? I'm not one to know the physics of it, but we know it just happens. Just happens. No, it doesn't just happen. There's a whole bunch of intelligence behind it, right? Whatever you got an engineer, you got teams of engineers, you got like really smart people. You got really smart people, and on the cutting edge of technology, and so they get the satellites up there. Okay, so there's craftspeople, and again, engineers and designers, and there's a whole business arrangement. I mean, there's a lot of intelligence behind it. Okay, so just basic logic. So then this planet, this planet is much, 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 much huger. It's much more immense than any satellite, any Czech Challenger or space shuttle or whatever the thing would be, the Apollo, or like that, or airplane 747. Right. So this Earth, which of course from one perspective is just a tiny blue dot, right? Everyone's seen that picture, the tiny blue dot, you know. So this Earth is just so, okay, so this is much, much bigger, I mean, by exponential trillions of times. All right, so then if we kind of assume, we kind of know that the Apollo or space shuttle, it didn't just happen, there's intelligence behind it. So therefore, it would take huge leaps of blind faith to assume, oh, well, this satellite called planet Earth, and it just kind of stays, it just kind of stays in orbit like perfectly, like more perfectly than any space shuttle, or more on time than any airplane, right? Like, you know, like you calculate, like, yeah, the sun's going to rise at like, you know, 7:12, and it's just like exact every day. Just happened. Just happened. So it requires a whole lot of blind faith to believe that. Right? Whole lot of blind faith. It's irrational. It's illogical. So logically, it's just like no. Just like there's a lot of like big brain power behind the 747. A lot of big brain power behind the space shuttle or whatever, the military satellites. So it means like, yeah, there would be like much, much bigger brain power behind the satellite called Earth that is just like very so consistent, and the other planets too, Mars and Venus and Neptune and like that. That's logic. That's logic. So, yeah. So for everything here in this philosophy, it's an applied philosophy of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, that everything is logically established. Actually, blind faith is discouraged. Everything's logically established. I know back about 40 years or so ago, I wasn't looking for God, spirituality, no, like, maybe, personal development a little bit, but I just like, when I studied this literature, I had to admit this satisfies my intelligence far, far, far more than anything else. And then it not just gives a consistent philosophy. No one here needs to trust me that it's a consistent philosophy. Apply your intelligence. We're encouraged to ask questions and see what you find. But it also gives like, and here's a process to follow. The technical term for the process is Bhakti Yoga. Here's a process to follow to see the extent to which you experience the truths asserted in this logical philosophy. So, liking to think of myself as an honest person, I thought, oh, I should give myself to the process because this makes more sense than anything else I'd encountered, and that's still true for me. So even like, oh yeah, for sure there are some things, many things that are beyond our logic and our rationale. Even that, though, I'm reminded in the Western philosophy, right? There's Immanuel Kant, very well-known work in Western philosophy, Critique of Pure Reason. And so, like, in a sense, by logic, he's coming to the accurate conclusion. There are truths beyond the capacity of our mind and intellect capacity to use rationality and logic. So we can come to, and just like, example often used. So just like, okay, to know each other, right? Like if anyone here wants to know someone else here, okay, so let's call it by the conventional, what's called modern scientific empirical process. And the process is, like I'll study the object in an aloof way, and then I can get information. And it works pretty good. Like if we're studying rocks, something inanimate, something without consciousness, I can control it, take it into the laboratory, expose it to heat, different chemicals. But let's say if I want to know a being with evolved consciousness, like an equal being, not a being that's inferior to me in consciousness. Well, that method of I'll observe you, I'll analyze you. I might get some information about you. I might learn something. And it's very limited, right? We all know, like if I really want to know you beyond maybe some somewhat superficial specifics, then the process is I gain your love and trust. I serve you. I gain your love and trust. Then you choose to reveal yourself to me. Then you choose to reveal yourself to me. And then I understand you far, far, far trillions of times more than I could ever get by making you a laboratory experiment or something like that. So that's a different epistemology, a different way to know, right? It's a very personal epistemology, gaining love and trust, and then the conscious being chooses to reveal. Okay. So applying that epistemology to God, that's called bhakti. Bhakti mama vijanati yavanyash tasmi tatamam tato gyatva vishate tadanatura. So that we serve God with love and devotion, which means we get sincere about what's that mean? How do I serve God with love and devotion? And that's the whole science given you. And then the personality of Godhead, gradually, according to our sincerity, reveals himself more and more intimately. That's called bhakti. So, yeah. So we're encouraged that any principle here to be able for ourselves and for sharing with others to cultivate expertise in being able to share it with respect to how it's logical, and to share it according to personal experience, and to share it with respect to it's called the Shastra, with respect to these ancient literatures, which are really timeless literatures. They're not books in the ordinary, mundane sense. Because even people who don't accept these ancient Vedas, when we use the term Veda, just in a broad sense, like the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, the Quran, whatever parts of that have come down authentically, they are also Veda. They are definitely also Veda. So Veda actually means knowledge. And I've found that even people who don't I don't think in terms of if it's in the Vedas, it's true. But when we share any principle here, and we cite Vedic authority, then it holds weight. It holds weight. It's for some, it's just all right, so this isn't just some hippie thing that started in 1968 or something. No, this is quite an ancient, solid body of knowledge. And it holds weight. And then, so logic, Shastric authority, and personal experience. Yes. I was coaching a client recently, and she's recently coming to practice some bhakti yoga. She's chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra Japa. We said some things like the planets floating doesn't make sense to think that it just happened by random chance. But somehow, by random chance, practically all my clients, after a relatively short period of time, they're chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra Japa. I don't know how that happens. Probably it's random chance. Okay. So, and so she's chanting japa, and she recently decided to follow some regulative principles. She gave up drinking alcohol. She gave up drinking, coffee with caffeine. She's rising early. And where she's living, she said, like, well, I don't have any bhakti community. She's not yet, coming to our online things, and she doesn't live in this area. She said, I don't have any bhakti community here. So we talked about, I said, well, yeah, I gave the example of Srila Prabhupada. In 1965, he left the land of Krishna, the bhakti community. And he of course is a touchstone for bhakti community. So when he came like to the New York metropolitan area, he wasn't saying, there's no devotees here. Saying, oh, all 13 million people here they're devotees. And they've forgotten. So, okay, let's create bhakti community. Let's awaken. And that's it. Sometimes people would talk in terms of being disconnected from God, disconnected from Krishna. Krishna is a name for the Supreme Personality of God. Prabhupada would say, no, you're not disconnected. You're always connected. You've forgotten that you're connected, but you're always connected. And the powerful distinction. Prabhupada gives an example, just like there could be, let's say, a child becomes teen, maybe young adult, and they rebel and they just live their life, and they just have they've completely forgotten who their father is, and they're just living their life and but the connection's there. The father-son connection's always there. And the father is always remembering. My son is doing some foolish things now. Okay, the father's always remembering the relationship. The son might have forgotten, but the connection's always there. So anyhow, so we started talking about, like, well, and so I said, well, to the extent that you want, you can be a touchstone to inspire bhakti community if you choose, if you choose that. And then she said, like, well, I don't know, because this thing about, like, Krishna is the source of all the energies, and like, she's not so much reading the books, and I mean, so I don't really know. And then so I could see, but then we started talking about, like, yeah, it's just like, because she rises early, and she was sharing, this was a big part of the session. She rises early and she chants some Hare Krishna Maha Mantra japa, and she's given up certain habits which she really liked, but she got, like, they're dragging her down. And now she sees, like, yeah, her life is transformed, and she's doing it for about 6 weeks now, just for about 6 weeks. She, like, life's problems still happen, life's disturbance, relationship stuff still happens. And she sees, like, just like the other day, stuff happened, and, like, I would have gone into, like, a 4-month downward depressed spiral. Like, in a day or two, I pulled myself out of it, and I can see it's because of these new habits. And she doesn't necessarily believe in Bhagavad Gita and like that. And she sees her friend. She said, yeah, just recently she went, they were at a bar. And then at 9 o'clock, she went home, and they're, oh, you're not going to stay with us and drink and really have a good time? No, I'm complete. And she went home, which is new for her. It requires a lot of courage, like that. It was new for her. And she said, then her friends, like, the next day, like, they need to sleep till noon because they're feeling terrible and this and that. She's getting up at like 6 a.m. and she's chanting her mantra like that. So we talked in terms of, she wants bhakti community, but, as far as, like, so far she hasn't really dived into the philosophy so much, but what she's heard, but I said, just share personal experience. Yeah, well, I'm doing this thing that's called japa, and you can share that with someone with non-attachment, but with childlike enthusiasm. And I've given up this caffeine and alcohol, and I'm getting up early now. And it's just like, it really works for me. Just share a personal experience, and someone becomes interested. What have you just done? You've just expanded your bhakti community, like that. So sharing personal experience, shastra, and in logic, logic. So, well, interesting points here coming up for me. Very interesting verse. So Krishna's saying, enter into each planet. And it makes sense that, okay, that there's some intelligence behind it. We went through that. Okay, now what's the nature of that intelligence? Again, that gets revealed in the process of bhakti. Because, okay, so modern science, the idea of okay, well, why do the planets stay rotating? Law of gravity. Now, interesting, and there's purports, like Prabhupada has purports about that. Prabhupada talks about gravity. So first of all, you might say the root meaning of Krishna is the attractive cowherd boy. Oh, new windows to the spiritual world that you have here. Krishna means attractive. So Prabhupada makes the point, Krishna, like that's gravity. Right? Gravity, Sankarshan, exactly. Yeah, Prabhupada makes that point. So one expansion of Krishna called Sankarshan, which is a name for the absolute, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, like that. And so we can see in that name Sankarshan, the root of Krishna, is Karshan. We can see the root Krishna. Right. So gravity essentially is like any material element, whether it's the Earth planet, or whether it's pillow, or whether it's an atom or a subatomic particle, has an attractive potency. And it all has a gravitational pull. And so Prabhupada, and so Sankarshan is the expansion of Krishna. That's about integration and disintegration. And so Prabhupada's saying that's okay. Like if we want to talk in terms of the modern gravitational theories, and I say theories because like even now their understanding of kind of like the way I was taught gravity in 1970 when I like 1975, like that. Now it's like, no, that's not it. The theories change. But even if we want to talk in terms of the theories, so Prabhupada's saying, yeah, so that's Sankarshan. That's Sankarshan, that's Krishna. So even if no, it's gravity. Yeah, so Krishna, the all attractive force. That's the essence of gravity, every material object. So, all right, so Prabhupada's referencing in this regard a text from Brahma Samhita here. Eko Pyasara Chaitum Jagadanda Koti Yatshatyasti Jagadanda Chayayadanda and Dantarasta Paramanu Chantarasta Govinda Madi Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. So what that says is that there that God, Krishna, so Krishna, God has like his own pastimes, nothing to do with the material realm, with such Chidananda, where every step is a dance, every word is a song, material time is conspicuous by its absence. But then in the material realm, he expands as, well, we can call it as three paramatmas, three super souls. We are in this body, there's the Atma, that's us, we're Atma. And Kshetragyam Chapiman Vidi, Sarvat Kshetreshu Bharata, Kshetragyam Gayara Yatadgyanam Patamama. But Bhagavad Gita described, but in this body, there's two persons. There's the Atma, there's us, and then there's the Paramatma. Para means supreme. So that's an expansion of Krishna sitting right next to us. It was actually really, the Paramatma is the heart of our heart. It's the soul of our soul. So this gets technical, but that's called the Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. We might call that the super soul of the microcosmos. And then there's the Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, which is the super soul of the whole universe, you might say, of the macrocosmos. And then there's Karana, Mahavishnu. A lot of people heard of Mahavishnu. That's become famous. There was a music band, the Mahavishnu. There was some record albums from the psychedelic era, something like that. So So Mahavishnu is the super soul of the metacosmos, macrocosmos, microcosmos. Okay, so it's an intricate arrangement. Again, just like to have a 747 going. There's a whole arrangement. So God arranges things through, and this is the science of God. This is the science of God. So, yes. So the super soul, the Paramatma. So you could say we are just like the rays emanate from the sun. The rays are part of the sun. The sun rays are not the same as the sun globe. They're not completely different from the sun globe, because just like the sun globe is hot and fiery and emanates light, similarly the rays are emanate heat and light. So they're not completely different, just like we're not completely different from God, but they're not exactly the same either. Right? Some differences too. So the Atmas, that's us, we're emanations from the Supreme, and similarly the material energy is an emanation from the Paramatma, from the Supreme. The material energy, a name for that is Maya. So for those of us, which is practically everyone within the material sphere, who are kind of like, I don't want to just serve God with love and devotion. I want to do my own thing. Okay, so then, all right, we get an opportunity for that, and that's called the world of Maya. That's called the world of Maya. We might compare Maya as like kind of complex. I don't have much understanding of complexity. I'm bewildered, like that. But okay, we can think in terms of two functions. Let's say there's like a manufacturing company that manufactures something, widgets or something like that. Okay. Okay. Or automobiles. So then the manufacturing company has an advertising department, and the advertising department convinces you don't want this. You need to have it. It's not just you want this car, you want this widget. You need it. Okay, so it's a whole, so Maya has its advertising department. Like, oh, if I don't get that status in society, if I don't get that minimum salary, if I don't get that respect, if I don't have that a peace of mind, that health condition, if I don't have that house, if I don't have this, if I don't get to belong to that club, I need that. So Maya convinces us, and it's always chasing the cat around the stick. So that's the advertising department of Maya. And then the company, it has a production department that it actually produces the stuff, right? So the stuff is made of Maya. And so that's one function. And then Maya has a function to convince us that to be, all those things we want to be: happy, peaceful, satisfied, joyful, fulfilled, valuable, loved, and loving. We need that. Okay, like we need something external to ourselves. Saint Francis said, we are searching for what is searching. And that intense drive, that intense search for something external to ourselves, that means we're under the influence of Maya, rather than actually all those experiences that I want. Again, peace, satisfaction, vibrancy, joy, fulfillment, childlike spirit of wonder and discovery, and power and beauty. That's who I am as a spirit soul. And I naturally experience that. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sajika Bhagavad Shravanandi Shuddha Chitte Karye Udai. To the extent that I give myself to my natural spiritual desires to selflessly serve Krishna with love and devotion, then all those beautiful qualities of the soul naturally radiate. We don't need to search for we don't need to search external. So, okay. So we discussed a bit the planets and the orbit part of the verse. Then there's the vegetables. Okay. And it's the same point. So it's the same principle. So Krishna is saying, I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. So just like with any object, we get to know the object through the different, what's called the different knowledge acquiring senses. Okay, like through the eyes, I can see the shape, and through the skin, I can touch, I can get the texture, and get to know things through the taste, the sound, and the fragrance. So the same is true for God. The same is true for the absolute, for the divine, for Krishna, the all attractive personality of Godhead. And so Krishna is giving us guidelines here. And in this process of Krishna consciousness, it's very world embracing. It's not world rejecting. It's not like, don't do this, don't do that. Right? Sure, there are guidelines we can follow that help us to come alive to our spiritual senses. So earlier in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Rasoham apsakanteya prabhasmi sasi suryaya pranavasarvedeshu shabdake pusham rishu. He says, I'm the taste and water. I'm the light of the sun and the moon, engaging all the senses. Punyo gandha pitivim cha. He says, I'm the fragrance of the earth. I'm the sound and ether. Sound and ether, we can think, like if we chant Om or chant Hare Krishna, maybe hear the chirping of birds. But Shabdake, Prabhupada, there's a lecture, he says, because as he was lecturing, there was an airplane passing over. And we could, that's pretty distasteful, ugly sound, saying airplane. But Prabhupada said, that is Krishna too. He is sound and ether. Okay, so not just sounds that we deem as beautiful. So the idea is Krishna is giving us guidance here how to engage all our senses. Again, it's very embracing. It's not about denying. To engage all our senses, tasting vegetables, appreciating the light of the moon. Prabhasmi sasi surya. Engage all our senses in the process of self-realization and God realization. Right? So, oh no, this is material. And then once we do that, then the matter, that is the process to transform matter into spirit. That's the process to transform matter into spirit. Right? So then the material, and let's say an energy like money, is it material or spiritual? We learn the art and the science how to use it in the service of the divine, then that money becomes Lakshmi, becomes spiritual. This cushion becomes spiritual. Using it in the service of the divine. So yeah, so here, okay, like vegetables again. Lakshmi Priya selected this verse. I think it was because of the vegetables part. Yeah. And so it's like, we all eat every day. We eat, maybe once in a while we fast, but then we feel it. Hey, time to eat again. Okay. Next day. Okay. So we all eat, a few times a day for the most part. So it's like, that's material. Well, so then that part of the process, but it's called prasadam. It's a whole transcendental spiritual science for the whole process of preparing and eating vegetables and fruits, grains, and that. The whole process is dovetailed in spirituality. It's dovetailed in love of God. And that's called the process of preparing prasadam and honoring prasadam. Prasadam means the grace, the grace of the divine, the grace of the divine. So that, like, to thank God for the food, that's nice. And then the prasadam process, it's just like more complete. It's like preparing the food, preparing the vegetables, not for the pleasure of my own tongue. At least this is the theory. I'm not there yet, but this is the theory. Preparing the food to be served and enjoyed by Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then Krishna has his eating process, and he eats in a way where we get the remnants, and then the eating itself becomes purified. Now, one could rightly ask, and it's a correct question, but here, like, Krishna is the juice in the vegetables. Krishna, he becomes the moon. He enters into each planet. So how can we offer him anything? It's all his. So that's true. The example is given, like Prabhupada gives the example of, like, one will, like a holy river in India is the Ganges. So one will bathe in the Ganges, take a palmful of Ganges water, and then offer the Ganges water to the Ganges. So the offering, in one, everything belongs to Krishna. Everything belongs to Krishna, I can think. But so the offering is for our purification. The offering is for, so that we just cultivate the consciousness. Like, before I smell a rose, okay, let me remember somehow. Punya Ganda Pritivinja. Krishna is the fragrance. Krishna is the fragrance. Okay, before I eat food, let me prepare it with love and devotion for God. And then we become purified. And we can feel the effect this way. So Krishna, in this part of the Bhagavad Gita, giving us many, many ways to realize self and God through nature, in this part here. And a place where Krishna does that a lot is the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna gives dozens of ways to realize him at the beach or on the ocean. Okay. And then at the end of the chapter, Krishna says, Yadya vibhutimat sattvam shrimad urjitam evava tatat eva avagachatvam mamatesham sasambhava. He says, no, because I've just given a few dozen examples here. All beautiful, mighty, and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. And then he says to Arjuna, Atava bhavanatena kim gyatena tava Arjuna vistabhyahamidam kritsnam ekam sena stito jagat. He goes, what need is there really for all this detailed knowledge? With but a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. So he's giving us he's giving us how to realize who we are, how to come to our bliss, how to realize God through vegetables, through tasting water, through a day at the beach. Okay, he's giving us all this detailed knowledge. And what, I guess, an understanding I have of when he said, what need is there for all this? Is he saying? He's saying that for those who are fully in love with God, for those who are fully serving God with love and devotion, like the residents of Vrindavan, just like that painting there, that window to the spiritual world. To those who are fully loving God, then they don't need to, they're naturally realizing Krishna everywhere. They're naturally real. But for those of us who have shown a lot of commitment to forget God, to forget Krishna, then here's some guidelines. Day-to-day guidelines to support every time I drink water, every time I taste a vegetable, right? Every time I see the light of the sun or the moon, to help me come back to my original consciousness. Help me come back. So for those in full God consciousness, there's no need for the detailed knowledge. I mean, they might get inspired by it anyway, but they don't need it to achieve the goal of life, which is that full simple, childlike devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna says, later in this chapter, Krishna says, Yomam evam asamudo janati pushottama. So sarva vidbhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. Krishna says, one who knows me is to be understood. One who knows me without doubting is to be understood as the knower of everything. And such a person naturally engages with full enthusiasm in my devotional service. So there's, yeah, let's absorb ourselves in detailed knowledge. Let's be more aware of how I can realize Krishna in the moonlight and the sunlight more today than yesterday, in everything I eat, everything I drink, and every sound in ether, every time I communicate. Let me realize Krishna more and more. And as we realize the greatness of this intelligence behind the rotation of this planet, then naturally we want to engage in devotional service. Similar principle in the first seed verse of Bhagavad Gita. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samandita. Krishna says, I'm the source of all material and spiritual energies. And those who get that, naturally, they serve me with all their hearts. Buddha bhava, they serve me not for some business relationship. Right? They serve me with all their hearts. So by enhancing our knowledge of this of source, naturally we're deepened in our inspiration to serve. And at that, in one, because like this, so we established it's actually logical that there would be an intelligence behind the satellite called the planet Earth. But it's like, but that intelligent person would be so much greater than like the intelligence at NASA, the intelligence behind this computer. That's kind of like, it's so inconceivably greater that like it takes a lot of humility to open to that. So instead of that, I'll call it mythology. It is mythology. Okay. Yeah. But actually it's quite logical that there's some intelligence there. So, all right. So it's in the first aphorism of Vedanta Sutra, Atito Brahma Jigyasa, means now's the time to inquire about source, about spirit. Now's the time to inquire about truth that will never be crushed by time. And so we inquire, we ask about those things that we're interested in, that we're curious about. And so this is like the supreme object of interest and curiosity, the different aspects of the absolute, with the personal aspect of the absolute being most comprehensive, most complete. Following up on his Vedanta Sutra in the first verse of his Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva says, Satyam Param Dhimahi. Right? He says, I meditate on the absolute. So we're getting guidance here, how to enhance our meditation on the absolute. That's deep. That's living a deep life. To the extent that we misidentify our eternal self, that servant of God, with the temporary body, even if we have so-called deep conversations, it's quite superficial. It's quite shallow. All right, I'll pause there, and I thank you for listening. I'll read the verse again. Text 13, chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita. Kama Visha Chabutani Darayam Yahamojasa Kushnami Chashadi Sarva Samo Bhutva Rasatmaka. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. Hare Krishna, thanks for your presence. Thanks for giving your hearing to Bhagavad Gita. I welcome at this time if anyone would like to share any comments, realizations, inspirations, or ask any questions. Ganasham Prabhu.
I just love this point that you were saying. Krishna consciousness is all embracing everything within the creation is a way to become God conscious through everything.
Yeah.
It's not that just God is in one place but like, when you see light, when you taste water, when you taste vegetables, yeah, we're on one of those planets that are floating in space. So just to think that the power of the Lord is holding us up, I'm always attracted to this point when I hear it, but I never take it with me. When I go and just live and eat something, I think, wow, this is the taste of Krishna. I love when Prabhupada emphasizes that, and I always love hearing about it, but it's amazing how just, like Prabhupada said, we're so dull, and that suddenly we're just going on with our lives, and we forget all these little moments where Krishna is actually everywhere doing everything. So anyway, I just appreciate the reminder that Krishna consciousness is actually embracing every part of life. I think when you love Krishna, then you see it everywhere, and as you mentioned,
Naturally,
naturally, it's just you're seeing Krishna's, power everywhere, and that's what a way to live, while we forget Krishna, we forget at this point too that he's actually the power behind everything, and so we have to kind of practice seeing that.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about, I always hear it, I'm always like, wow, so beautiful, so wonderful, and I never do it. Just the day-to-day things that we see, the sun, what a power in the sky there. Krishna's behind that. It's just a little touch of his power. So, appreciating the reminder.
Thank you, Ganesham. Yeah, thanks. And it's a point for Prabhupada in his talks and his conversations and his books. He makes so much. And and so right had humbly really like, I think you love that point. It's like, wow, it's like it's never with me until I hear it again. And I like the term the principle you brought into your expression, the practice. So I'm with you in that club, like when like if I'm eating and I have some commitment, like anything I consume will be prasad. But then when I'm actually eating, this is service to Krishna. These vegetables, it's just not there for me, even after so many decades. We use the word practice. I'm thinking kind of like at that time of year, many people make the resolutions and this and that. So even that, okay, even something like, okay, so I'm the light of the sun and the moon. So let's say if once a day, 2 days per week in 2023. Because I'm seeing sun every day, that would enhance the quality of my life so much. If even once a day, once per week, when I think of sun, I think, that's Krishna. And there's thousands of resolutions we could make. Well, once we get into more than one or two, then I won't do any. But I'm thinking that. Then at the end of 2023, it's just once a day, once or twice a week, I remember the sunlight. That's Krishna. That would be so good for me. Thanks for sharing that. We have some hands up. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I'm going to right now ask for, at the Bhakti Oasis, there's a hand up.
Hare Krishna, dear Govinda. Thank you so much for giving this class here at Melrose House, or Prabhupada's house in Melrose with the satsanga there. We're actually in the way of shopping for groceries, so this was very relevant for our practical life today. And I felt very much in the spirit of Prabhupada's mission, sourcing our produce today. So thank you. This was really perfect time for us.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also came across, because we recently welcomed Tulasi Devi into our home, and I came across something about putting Tulasi leaves onto the prasadam offerings. And so I was wondering if you could share more about that practice. Our Tulasi is very small. I don't know that I want to harvest leaves from her every day to, put onto the prasadam offerings, but I just was wondering if you're reading, you had found anything more about that you might be willing to share.
Okay. Yes. Okay. That's a practice. That's a practice that servants of Krishna do, and it's not something that I do. I'm not in the habit of. I'm very moved to hear that there at Bhakti Oasis, Bhakti Daniel, Bhakti George, you're serving Srimati Tulasi Devi. So she is a pure devotee of Krishna in the form of a plant. She's the pure devotee of Krishna in the form of a plant. And so Krishna, Vishnu, actually on the way here, on the car ride here, Mother Malini and I, we chanted Tulasi mantras. And it's actually a standard part of the morning program that Srila Prabhupada gave us. And although here in our community, it's for the most part, we don't do the Tulasi songs. So Malini and I chanted it. It's a very transcendently beautiful mantras. And so she's a pure devotee. So you're serving a pure devotee, serving Tulasi Devi. Personally, as far as the care, what it looks like to care for and serve Tulasi Devi, I have like no expertise in that. At the same time, we know that Tulasi Devi appreciates being offered at the feet of Vishnu and Krishna. When we offer to Krishna, he likes for Tulasi leaves to be offered, and then we honor those Tulasi leaves. So there's actually devotees who've specialized in the service have written books or booklets on how to care for Tulasi. But basically, yeah, offer Tulasi leaves with each offering, and we become in more endeared to Krishna. And so there gets to be lots of detailed questions around that, and which again I'm not really the one to ask. So that's my response.
Hi, Krishna, appreciate you.
We're not opposing directly to share you only have one plate.
Okay, so
Like on the altar at the temple, and when you're deities, then we will offer to Vishnu Tattva only.
Vishnu
That's
Tattva.
my understanding.
Okay, yeah.
So if you have only one plate, like I have only one plate, offering to share Prabhupada, I wouldn't do that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So Malini's getting into details that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, she met it to us, Devi, she's direct servant. So we offer her to Krishna.
Directly. Thank you for your question there. And could you remind me your name?
Rosa.
Rosa. Yes, Rosa.
Said something about, I'm not going to remember exactly, those who have the knowledge that he is, or that God is in everything, have the right mindset. So it just made me think of within Christianity, there's often reference to things like, like the Crusades, right?
Yeah.
They go out, and then modernly people ask, because of the concept of heaven and hell, well, what about the people who do not know? Like, what about them? And there's always these discussions of, well, they're forgiven for not knowing. But I think most cultures live more closely with the natural order.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was the truth that came up for me. It's not that they are forgiven, it's that they're already closer.
Yeah.
So that was just something that occurred to me with what you were saying. It's more of a comment than a question.
Thanks for your comment, Rosa. There's a lot there. I appreciate your comment very much. I'm recalling some experience in my life, which I believe relates to what you're saying. This comes to me. So this was 1983, 1984. I was living in the desert. I was living in a desert town in the Negev desert of Haaretz Yisrael. And it was a town called Arad. It's a town called Arad. And actually it was this amazing development town because like there's no water anywhere around there. But through ingenious systems of irrigation and through the drops, they would take water from the Dead Sea, which is dead. It's a stuff, but it was just like, I mean, Israel's like tops in agriculture and so many things. They got they're good at these things. Okay, and so it was a development town, and I was studying at a place called WUJS. It's an acronym for World Union of Jewish Students. Anyhow, and we were studying different things. but there's lots of philosophy classes, lots of philosophy, and there were like debates around God, this or that, and God's existence, and there were some of the professors were rabbis, they were all Zionist, but some were a non-theistic, and some were more secular, and like that. And I remember I would in the mornings, and it's desert, it's like a town. You go outside the borders of the town, it's desert. I mean, like camels. I mean, camels and Bedouins and things like that. So I would take my japa walk, and I would go into the desert and be chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. It was a beautiful experience. And I ran into some Bedouins, and I was like 22, 23 at the time. And I remember I went to one young man, maybe about my age. His name was Hassan. He was Bedouin. And so no formal education like that. But I could see him, and I ran into others too, that, Srila Prabhupada sometimes quotes the English poet Cowper, who said, the city is made by man, the country is made by God. So even though Hassan and I, we didn't really have any language, like he didn't speak English, I didn't speak Arabic, we had some Hebrew in common, we managed to communicate. And like those questions in the philosophy classes, he was just like, they're questioning whether there's like a God, like this was Hassan. Okay? He would be like, this sky, like, can they make that in the industrial town there? All this sand, like, can they do this? Like, he was thinking, like, are they idiots? And I needed to say, well, apparently, yeah. So I think, yeah, that it's just, so it's just like, oh, he couldn't even engage in those sophisticated philosophical discussions that we were having in class. He was so close to God.
And so if I may, you mentioned during your talk also, we are the knowing that is trying to see itself, basically. Yeah. And so in that, I think we become lost, right? Where we need all these labels and these definitions in order to feel safer. So the way I see it is I love asking why, and I love the inquiry. But whenever I look at the intention of the inquiry,
yeah,
when the intention of the inquiry is based in ego, it's based in fear, it's based in the need for safety, then I find that the answers are less genuine. And that's where we become attached to these different things. But
that's such a, it's such a simple, profound point. Yeah, what's the spirit? What's the consciousness behind the inquiry? Like that, yeah. Because like, even if it's an apparently intelligent question, but to what extent is like, I want people to see that I'm intelligent. And then what's the quality of response that I'm even able to receive? Or by asking this question, I'm subtly or not so subtly trying to establish that my point of view is right and yours is wrong. Right? And if that simple bhakti and sincerity is lacking, I really don't have a consciousness to receive sublime truth. So there's a text in Bhagavad Gita, actually there's whole sections of Bhagavad Gita that relates to what you're saying, at least what I understand you're saying. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanabanam prapajyate. Vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudulabha. So there's a path described in the Vedas called Gyan Yoga. Like we could say the English word know, or the Greek gnosis. The origin is this Greek word Gyan. So that through acquiring knowledge, we can come to the absolute truth, which ultimately brings us to that pure, loving, devotional service to God. But the idea is like those who are inclined to the knowledge path, there tends to be some other agenda, like, look how smart I am, and that sort of thing. So Krishna says, if on that path, if there's sincerity, gradually one can make progress. It might take actually many lifetimes, because there's some other just like some people, like, I'm going to collect fancy cars, I'm going to collect big bank accounts, I'm going to collect people who honor me. Okay, so it's like a little more subtle. I'm going to collect knowledge, but it's still about me, like that. And Krishna says, but if one's sincere on that path, eventually, if they're sincere, eventually their heart will become purified by the sincere inquiry. And they'll come to the point like Hassan in the desert, of serving God with love and devotion. Thank you, Rosa, and Bhakti, and then Damayanti.
Thank you for a nice class. I was appreciating how you were mentioning this kind of the miracle of the planets being able to even be orbiting,
Yeah.
and all of these amazing things. I was thinking how human beings would often think, oh, where's the miracle? Like, where, I want to see a miracle. Show me that God exists.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, you can just look around. Like, I mean, it's really not that hard to just see that everything is a miracle. I think it's only not a miracle because we're just exposed to it all the time. But if we really were to look at it, it's really amazing from just a simple leaf. Just how life keeps multiplying and all of that, and it just the sun, the sky, and everything, how it rises every day at this time. So there's some intelligence behind that. And I have a question, because you're saying we can tend to think that it's just mythology.
Yeah.
If you said something like we can think it's mythology if we don't acknowledge that there's intelligence behind it or something.
If I'm not ready to humbly accept the existence of an intelligence like far, far, far beyond mine,
Right.
then I'll relegate it to mythology.
Right. So how do I accept that when there are maybe other verses of the Gita or other verses of scripture that do sound like, say, mythology, or there are tales that I've read or studied that are just certified mythology, like Greek mythology or something.
Yeah.
That are just obviously like humans made this up. They're just stories.
Yeah.
So then it can sound like that, hearing some of the stories from scripture or some of the verses, like saying that that the coming down through the rain and in the grains, and then like the souls come through the rain, like that.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Things like that. So how do I like kind of reconcile things that sound mythological to my own like human intellect?
Yeah.
And how do I get that faith that this is true?
Thanks for your sharing and comment and question. One thing, the first part of your sharing, I'm reminded of a quote I've heard attributed to Albert Einstein. He said, there are two ways to see the world. One, as if nothing is a miracle. Two, as if everything is a miracle. So maybe it's Einstein or whoever that's really brilliant. But man, it's like there's no in between. Well, there's no. If you reduce it, either you see like either nothing's a miracle because everything's reductionist, deterministic, mechanistic, and maybe we don't understand all the laws yet. But once we do, then we can, like that. Yeah, like that. It's either nothing's a miracle, or like everything's a miracle. I mean, because like, well, look how far we advance. We've advanced in biology and chemistry, mathematics. Like, let's just say like, okay, this body is made of trillions of cells. Like, one cell, we don't have a clue how the cell works. And I'm no biologist, but I know we don't have it. Like, the more they discover, the more they like that. Like, every cell's a miracle. Even we talked about like Prabhupada references Andantarasta, Paramanu Chantarasta. Right? So there's this Paramatma, not just next to us, but in every atom, in every atom. So even that, we hear that every atom. Okay. But so even again, when I first learned about atoms 50 some years ago, Greenberg Elementary School, the whole thing is like, oh no, that's not the way atoms are now. The whole model of atoms from 100 years ago, even 50 years ago. Oh no, that's not the way. So now they're so when it says in the Vedas, the super soul's in every atom, Paramatma is in every atom. What's that mean really? It doesn't necessarily mean the concept of science in 1930 or 2020 of atom. It means like in the fundamental unit of nature, which now they're saying is quarks or hadrons. It'll be something different 50 years from now. Okay, so every atom is a miracle, you know, like that. And so, I don't know. In terms of your question, you know, it's well that yeah, I think your sharing question we relate there, because that's the thing. If we get that really everything's inconceivable, doesn't mean we can't understand it. We can understand it to the extent that we engage in bhakti, then we get realization, right? Like the soul, who can understand the soul? But I have more understanding now about the soul and matter. What's the difference between soul and matter and soul? I have more understanding now than I did 40 years ago because I've engaged in some bhakti. So inconceivable doesn't mean we can't understand. So the analogy of like, let's say a road map. Okay, let's say we have a map to get from here to New York City. Okay. All right. So, and then, okay, so the map says, okay, so yeah, so you go, you get on this called I-75, and then after some 70 miles, you'll see something called I-10, and then go east, and then you'll see something called I-95. And then soon you'll see it. It'll be, say, Georgia. Okay, so, okay, well, there have been like 15 landmarks so far. And next time that's something called South Carolina. Yeah, right there, right where it says. So it's kind of like 15 in a row. Wow, okay, I'm beginning to trust this map. Now, I don't have experience of Virginia yet, but it says Virginia's there, 300 miles away. I'm trusting. And wow, Virginia's there. So yeah, I don't have experience of Delaware yet, but now I'm like, so similarly, like, okay, to the extent that, you know, I've applied myself, just like even again, I went to school, I got degrees and things like that, studied different philosophies. I went to different religious groups, you know, more as a curiosity, not like practice. I mean, the first one I committed to was Bhakti Yoga. But then, you know, as far as philosophically, just like, what is the self? What's the mind? I studied lots of psychology, right? So nowhere do I, like, I could choose one or two verses from Bhagavad Gita and get more understanding of what's the mind. What's the difference between the mind and the self? What's the difference between the mind and the external body? Then I get in, you know, a 4-year psychology program. So as far as what is the self, because we can get into far out past times on different planetary systems and things like that. But you know, it was like that based on applying my intelligence and my experience applying the process, then I see, okay, like this map is accurate. Now there are things I don't have experience of yet. And these Vedas given to us through our current link to the Parampara Srila Prabhupada, this is the source of knowledge that I trust for that which is beyond my current experience and my mind and senses. And that's, and as I you know, like if I said I have absolute trust and faith, I'm basically saying I'm a pure devotee. So I don't. At the same time, I can say for sure. And again, I had like scientific background and studied engineering, this and that. But whether it's for astronomy or anything, this truly is the source that I trust, and it's because of It's where I'm placing my reasonable faith based on my experience. So there is that which is beyond our purview. It doesn't need to stay beyond our purview because like Srila Prabhupada, he's in the demigod Indra. It's not theoretical for him, okay, like that. But for me, that's theoretical. But it makes sense. Not just like, there would be there's intelligence behind that 75-watt light bulb. It makes sense. There's intelligence behind the multi-trillion watt sun. It makes sense. So like this is just a more rational, logical system than I've seen anywhere. And to the extent that I practice it, I'm getting realization of it. So as far as that beyond my mind and senses, I'm trusting this more than I trust any other source, including modern science, like the roadmap.
There's another point that yesterday morning I had a very similar question with myself. I was chanting, and what I said, it's just additional.
Yeah.
Is that I came to a place like, Srila Prabhupada believed in it, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati believed in it.
Okay.
And so it's not even like, how do I regard those personalities who are full faith that the soul, some souls, not all the souls, some souls come down with the rain. Probably less and less. Probably less and less, I'm saying.
Less and less demigods come in here.
Yeah, like outrageous stories from the Bhagavatam. And so there's this point to landmark in our own faith building up. And that morning I felt it wasn't enough. And I felt, okay, now it challenged me to look at how do I trust those personalities who are full faith.
Yeah.
It was really challenging like that.
Yeah.
It was a direct challenge.
Thanks for emphasizing that point. And that's where, our faith and our direct link to the Parampara, Srila Prabhupada's absolute faith, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Thanks for that. Yeah. The guru. And we look at like, okay, so like I wasn't there at the time of the creation of the material cosmos. So this idea that I got some four-armed personalities laying on a snake, and then out of his pores, or okay, like that. Like obviously any rational progressive person would believe not that, but they believe what's logical, that there was a big nothing, and the nothing exploded into strings, and then from the nothing exploding, then obviously there was Shakespeare's sonnets. That's rationality. Okay, so the logic of it, no, actually logically it makes sense that based on the physical law of entropy, an explosion will lead to a high level of organization like Shakespeare's sonnets. No, actually what makes more sense is that higher intelligence, manifested for a purpose. Now, what's the nature of higher intelligence? Well, it makes sense. It makes sense to me that if we look at the pastimes of the absolute, they'd be far more far out than any Spielberg plot. In other words, like if we look at these fantastic pastimes of that realm, and like that, if they were something that were like, hey, that's pretty cool, like the Hollywood movie I saw, that would be kind of disappointing. Right? If they could be contained in a Hollywood plot that won the Academy Award. But that I would expect it would be more far out than anything Broadway or Hollywood or Bollywood could produce.
Any human mind.
Any human mind.
Yeah, it's really about science. The science have really lost that Gyani aspect, it seems, because Gyani aspect will be like wanting to acquire and discover the absolute truth.
Yeah.
And so science seems to be naturally living there, because wherever, if they go to the smallest particle,
Yeah.
even if they go to the smallest of the smallest, at one point, they need to admit that no matter how small they go, that particle came from somewhere.
Yeah.
And same thing when they go like cosmic. Even it goes the soup, let's say the soup.
Soup, yeah.
Soup or whatever it is, where the soup came from.
Yeah.
That's like a child could go to those places, like the Bedouin.
Hassan, yeah.
In Hassan. And science have lost that sense of wonder and discovery, so much so that they are just tenacious and stubborn, and they don't even go to those natural, simple, matter-of-fact conclusion that no matter how deep you go into the particular or how you go into creation, there is a point where you need to stop.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Okay. Because we could think of like science as like, oh, the Gyan, but that's completely not true.
No.
It might be rare. Maybe some theory, like someone like, hello, David, welcome.
Hi, I'm David. Thank you.
Maybe someone like Albert Einstein or Isaac Newton. They were real Gyan yogis, but very rare. Basically, it's a good point, because basically science, it's all about the culture of karma. It's all about enjoy, through our scientific inventions, then we'll enjoy this as more, right? It's not even in principle about the culture of Gyan. It's about eating, sleeping, mating, defending. And that's what 99.99% of the scientific establishment is about. There could be a few exceptions. We gave some exceptions from the past, Einstein, Newton, something like that. But it's all about getting better enjoyment, better karma. So it's eating, sleeping, mating, defending, glorified animal life. So that's a true point. It's a sad point. And it's pretty much known. The scientific establishment is more or less completely sold out to the military industrial complex. That's pretty much known, and society needs a military and manufacturing and all that. But there's not a true Gyan culture. I remember, this was also my Israel days. Anyhow, I was doing some Sankirtan, and this was before we went to the Arab villages, Druze. I was at university. I was good at sneaking into places you weren't allowed to go to. And I went to the laboratory, some biological laboratories, and I remember I had some copies at that time. It was like right when Origins magazine came out. And I was like, we have a devotee scientist writing about like evolutionary theory and Big Bang and origins and stuff like that. And so I was in the biological laboratory, and they were nice people, but I thought I could get like into some conversation about these things. They were nice and accepting. Yeah, I mean, like in a personal way, but they were just like we're just really not interested in that. Like that. Just like we have our experiment and we get our salary, and they liked working with the biology or the chemistry and to make some inventions, but it was just there was no culture of Gyan there.
No philosophy.
Yeah,
I have that experience recently with scientists, researchers. I'm excited to have philosophical conversation. There's no philosophical brain. Yeah, it's quite surprising. I guess science have given comfort to people like karma, like you said, eating, mating, sleeping, and defending.
Yeah, yeah,
Science have given that to the general populace.
yeah.
So they have the vote of the vote of faith and trust
They're honored.
from the general populace,
Yeah,
because washing machine and whatever. And so based on that vote of trust that they gain from inventing things for comfort.
Yeah.
Then they also gain the vote of trust and faith for whatever theories come out.
Yeah.
Even so it's illogical, and even so it's not scientific, it doesn't even follow the scientific process. The general mass of people is gobbling it and accepting it as absolute truth.
Yeah, you've given us the microwave oven and hybrid cars, like, so you're saying it all came from a big explosion of nothing. Yeah, that's basically, you say there was a soup, and then there was the bacteria and amoebas became tomatoes and monkeys. Yeah, good.
Good, because my microwave allow me to cook very quickly. Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah, it's quite brainwashing and manipulative, really.
Yeah, it's quite a, it gets into a whole thing that it's important to expose what's happening for some seismic shift of consciousness. It's important to have these discussions and to expose what's happening on that level.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's such an important service. Damayanti, did you have a comment or a question?
Hare Krishna. You're frozen. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
I'm hearing you now. Yes, yes.
Okay, you look frozen to me. But you can hear me? Okay, now I see
Yeah.
you.
It's good.
Thanks.
It's good.
Thanks for the class and discussion. I just had a few comments. One is that I really like hearing, at least, I realize that getting to know God is a personal process. Like that's makes sense, and it's also my experience. And at the same time, I do like hearing when you present or when others present the logic of the existence of God. And I get really enlivened, and I feel excited, like I want to share the logic of the existence of God with others. And one thing that was sort of touched on in the class is like, there's one thing to like, there's like different levels of like realization of the existence of God. And we can present the logic, but then when we present the logic with conviction, and we're speaking about like the faith of Srila Prabhupada and those who are pure devotees, or even those who are practicing Krishna consciousness, they can embody conviction. And I experience you when you dear Govinda Prabhu, when you share things along the lines of science and logic, and you have a way of presenting things with a lot of conviction. And even you use sort of sarcasm. I don't know what it's called, but you're like embodying, like you're kind of playing the part, playing a role. And there's like, I don't know if it's a playfulness, but it's basically like you're embodying conviction combined with sharing the logic of the existence of God or disproving illogical things from the science community. And it's really enlivening for me, and it makes me want to go out and practice. I want to like say something bold on Facebook or whatever, like, hey, here's like 5 points. Prove this wrong to me. Like, let's just get into it, because it just feels a little fun to like practice having conviction. In other times I might have doubt, but right now this class is inspiring me to like, I want to like paste something bold out there, and I want people to argue about it. Like, let's go into the world and like create a little disturbance, because so that's how I feel from the class. And So it's kind of like responding as well to Bhaktilata's question, like, let's just, in my, one response that's going through my mind, like, how do we develop the faith? Like, let's just have fun and practice conviction, you know? So that's just one idea. And then I had one more comment.
Yes.
And that is, there's a quote that you said in the class, and I don't know which one, but it was something along the lines of Krishna speaking, those who realize that I am the creator of everything, naturally serve me with love and devotion. Do you know what I'm speaking about? There was a quote you said.
Yeah, that those who realize that I'm the source of all material and spiritual energies, those who know me, then naturally they're inspired to serve me with devotion. Yeah.
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 Like somewhere early in my bhakti yoga, like in being introduced to bhakti yoga, it like dawned on me, like, I've been provided everything, like my whole existence, every day I've been provided and taken care of, and I've never said thank you. You know, I mean, maybe it's not love and devotion, but at least I could be grateful for everything I've been provided, you know. And I do think it's a natural, that's sort of like, that's like my like logical step from like, why are we created as loving servants of God? Because it's natural to be grateful and thankful when you're provided everything, when you're provided a beautiful, eternal, blissful existence. The natural relationship is to return through, experiencing the gratitude, but then because we're active beings, like that wants to manifest in action, like returning energy to the source. So anyway, I'm really enlivened, and thank you for the class, and thanks for the association to everyone there. I wish I could have some prasadam. That's all that's missing.
Thank you, Damayanti. Thanks for sharing. I'm glad that something in our class and discussion has moved you to go out there and agitate people. I feel successful. I feel successful. And yeah, just like let's say we're at a home, and then we get fed meals, and like we don't the food. Like even thank God or think of God, think of food. Nice, good family and all, but wasn't God conscious. And so it just yeah, the basic, the basic gratitude, like wow, being provided for. And I'll share it related to something you shared there, Damayanti. Going back to my Israel days, early mid-80s. And I remember like I was so excited to have this philosophy, and I would present it, and I could see I would get feedback, mostly indirect. It was clear, an anartha in my heart, is like, I'm superior to you. Because like anyone could come, we could guest, and I would always defeat them. Of course, I'm just trying to share the knowledge, but it was so much about like, whoa, right? And then like at some point it was hard to deny, like this is an anartha, like I'm getting some material sense of superiority. So hopefully in 38 years, I've made some progress in pulling that weed, but I know it's something I've struggled with. So thanks for your sharing. I feel encouraged. Hare Krishna. This is just like what life is for, this discussion. What's the next part of our program?
Yeah, we're gonna do a round of japa.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next part of our program.
I mean, I'm all fired up to do japa.
Liberation through sound vibration.
Yes.
Okay.
We're gonna probably stop the recording for this part.
Yeah, let's
just so we
stop.
have the classes separate.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
Stop the recording.
All right. So Hare
Is
Krishna,
Rosa
just give us
still
a
here?
moment.
Is Rosa?
I believe she had to leave with the Ashwani. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, she had some other.
So that means, yeah, so let's, yeah, this is Shabda K.